Brock University acknowledges the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dishwood-Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous people. Good morning, and welcome to this session of Business Breeders, a live webinar series hosted by Goodman Group at Brock University. My name is Abdul Wakibi, and it's my distinct pleasure to serve as the director of Goodman Group here at Brock University. Goodman Group is a community-focused learning and development services provider that works to support professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs pursuing growth through professional development certificate programs, executive education consulting services, and startup support. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome the many of you who are joining us today live, and to those who will be watching this session, who will be watching the recording of this session at other times and from many jurisdictions. And to those of you who are watching this at different times, good morning, good afternoon, and of course, good evening. This webinar series aims to provide 45-minute readers filled with insightful discussions on timely topics that are relevant to the businesses and everyday lives, led by award-winning Brock University faculty and leading industry experts, all encouraging thoughtful debates and keeping us feeling connected as we get through this. For today's panel discussion, please feel free to type in your questions into the chat feature, which is open now. In a moment, I will introduce our panelists for today's sessions, and thank you for the many of you who have already submitted your questions at the point of registration. You may also tweet your questions using @GSB Goodman Group, one word. That is all one word. So @GSB Goodman Group, and using the Business Breeder hashtag in there. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce to you today's webinar lead, and we're lucky to be joined by two industry experts in this area. I'm going to start off by introducing Sasha Ali-Hosein, who leads a team of data scientists across the media and digital media groups on how they can leverage machine learning to solve some of Cineplex Digital Media's toughest problems. Sasha was part of the team that developed Cineplex Digital Media's first machine learning product that recommended media ads at the right time to the right person. And besides her life as a data scientist, she is an avid believer and active contributor towards growing women in STEM. Sasha is a member of Data for Good, University of Waterloo's Women in Math, and Waterloo Women's Impact Network. That's very great. Thank you for being here, Sasha. And allow me to introduce to you our second excellent panel today, and that's Mitu Mann. And she is the Chief Data Officer for Phoenix IT and Consultant Data Governance Lead at GoEasy. Mitu has over 15 years of experience in the data governance and privacy industry. She has been leading data governance, privacy, security, and strategic technology, which builds across several institutions and industries such as telecommunication, media, retail, and finance. She does have a background in providing insights on data management, security, and privacy of data, as well as leading numerous strategic initiatives that build on the past experience at PricewaterhouseCoopers, Rogers LCBO, and presently GoEasy. With a background in management information system, she is also a certified data privacy solution engineer, a certified information security auditor, a certified risk and information systems control, and a project management professional. And she has been a guest speaker and moderator at events such as Data Analytics and AI and Data Analytics for the Public Sector Conference. Welcome, Sasha and Mitu. And allow me to start off by posing one of our questions to you as a starting point. Given the subject that we have and the area, and I'm just going to switch from screen to screen here, what steps do you take to be seen as a leader in this industry? And I'm going to direct that to Sasha to start us off on that one.
Thanks, Abdul, for the introduction. So I think for me, to be seen as a leader, you really have to develop the trust within your team. And when my team is performing, they know that I kind of encourage them to lead on two pillars. It's really excellence and relationships. So I think because my team knows that I'm looking for excellence in work, as well as them building relationships with anyone they interact with, together, they see that I pay attention to both aspects of their work life. Because I am in the data field as well, I think it's important that your team knows you can also do the work, so they trust you on that excellence in work level. So those two kind of combined together is really what my team looks for, and I think we have a good camaraderie between each other. So they trust me to be able to guide them in doing the work themselves, but they also see me as very relatable and somebody who can, get into the weeds with them. So I think in the data field, you really have to blend this, both being able to do the work yourself, as well as forming those deep bonds with both your clients and your team. And that's how we kind of move together and overcome some obstacles.
Excellent, thank you. And Mitu, the same question for you, and perhaps having a pandemic blend into this too.
So it is interesting. I changed roles during the pandemic as well. I moved from LCBO to Go Easy. And being a leader within my area of data governance, it's more towards understanding what the businesses require and what privacy requires, and then being able to translate it back to the teams where the BAs or the architects are going to work to facilitate those requirements. So it's making sure that I understand what we need as an organization, and then communicating it back to my team. In terms of the team themselves, totally agree that a work-life balance is essential. So trying to keep a pace, which they can continue as well, especially during a pandemic, understanding people's needs and the requirements from working from home as well too. But it is the constant of going up and looking at it from a higher level and a strategic level, and then you do need to go down. Sometimes you need to work on the documents, figure the requirements out, and then translate it back to either the business team or your own IT team as well too. So speaking the different languages and understanding the needs and wants from all levels of management and employees.
That's excellent. And both of those sounds like elements of trust, and trust building such an important component. And just recalling back on a conversation with someone who was leading the charge in the Fort McMurray crisis situation going back some years. One of the phrases that resonated with me is that it was about building trust before you need it. And then so when you're in a crisis situation, you're going to call on your team and those that you're leading. And of course, trust needs to be there already in existence. And both of you, I think, are speaking to that one. So that's resonated that one here. In this area, in this field of data and data governance, historically, there's been, or perhaps even to date, there's been some suggestions that this is more of a male-dominated area. What are some of the elements that female individuals and leaders could do for their voices to be heard? And we'll go with Mitu on that one first, please.
So one of the things is seeing more women's representation at all levels. The more that you see yourself reflected, the more you're going to want to go towards that industry, and it starts at the ground up. So working to encourage students when they're in high school and university to choose the STEM options, and making it, I brought this point up that right now the professional engineers of Ontario are working at getting to 30% by 2030 of female representation. And so that in and of itself, to me, seemed something, to be honest, it seemed archaic, because I was like, aren't we already at 50-50? Like, what world are we living in? But it is something that means, if these are the facts, then that means we need to strive to make sure that we have equal numbers graduating from the programs, and then making sure that they have the opportunities to grow and not necessarily stop at middle management once they get into the industry. So breaking that glass ceiling and showing that you have equal representation of CIOs, CEOs, and overall in data that goes the whole way down. Over to you, Sasha.
Yeah, I agree with Mitu 100%. It definitely makes a big difference when females are seen at all levels in the work organization. So I know there's a big push for the C-suite to be equal with females and males. But sometimes in my experience, the younger employees, like the analysts, they don't really see themselves in the C-suite as yet. So I really liked Mitu's points to put females in every single hierarchy so they can see what their next step is. And I think women are very planning focused and like to strategize a little bit. So it's nice for them to have a clear path. And that's how you get them to keep moving up the chain as opposed to jumping into another industry entirely.
A question here that's come up, it speaks to what, and this speaks to your experiences and activities, then cognizant that there is significant presence and activity and experience that you guys are involved in. What work have you done to bring more female representation to the field and the areas that you've worked with? And Sasha, please start us off.
Yeah, so I volunteer at a program called Technovation, and I love it. So it's specifically for females who are less than 15 years old. And I have seen some volunteers who are even 8 years old. And their mission is essentially to create an app to benefit something in their community. So for example, this one team created an app that mapped out all of the water stations in parks and so forth in the Waterloo region to try to minimize plastic water bottles. But because we're encouraging young girls as young as 8 to think in the STEM field and even go ahead and create an app with mentors, of course, helping them, they kind of feel propelled to just continue down that direction already. So seeing the Technovation come to life has been really eye-opening. I've been volunteering with them for about 3 years, and it's across the world, even internationally too. I just really like their mission of, letting really young people give it a try first, let them see that there's an element of fun in it, and then they themselves get kind of amplified up to continue on in their life. There is another initiative that I work in called the Waterloo Women's Initiative. It is part of the University of Waterloo, and it seeks to pair up professionals with people who are kind of on the fence on if they want to get into the STEM field. And same thing like what Mitu said, people have to see themselves in a higher up role, and that's how they can aspire to be better. So I think definitely getting the young girls when they're like 8 years old is awesome, but also the working professionals, making sure they don't flee from the field and they continue pushing forward and facing challenges by having a mentor peer to them has been really impactful.
Excellent, thank you. And you're speaking to some of the solutions around retention there. And if I can turn that to Mitu and get your thoughts on looking at sort of retention being part of the challenge here, perhaps. What are some of the strategies that you might have seen work better when you have worked to motivate your team? And would you advocate or advise those who are watching here to say, in terms of strategies, would you look for different strategies for your workforce, but based on gender, but also in terms of and then blending in the COVID element of the distributed work pattern? How have your motivational approaches changed perhaps over time? Me too.
That's quite a lot in there. Let me try a little bit at that. So one of the things that was interesting, I was just in a meeting earlier today, and we're working on a Salesforce build. And so one of the things that was just randomly noted was I had come in from a side point of view just to be like, hey guys, I heard this, ear to the ground. This was a concern. We need to address it. Everybody else was male at the table. I wasn't even part of the project, but because I'd listened, I wanted to make sure that they knew and I was able to give them some heads up on what was coming up and some speed bumps along the way. And I was thinking in my head, maybe because this webinar was coming up, I was like, there's no guys at this table right now. And this might be why some of this stuff is going on, right? Like you need to have, there is benefits, and in something Sasha said earlier, in terms of women are good at planning, at strategy, each gender, and it's not to say our skills and techniques are limited to our gender. men can also be good at planning and strategy, but everybody looks at things with different perspectives, and how they come to the table builds a bigger, more holistic picture and gets organizations to their end state at a better, faster, and improved rate, I think. And I think the more we realize that, to also, like, it's been, historically we've looked at leadership as it should be like this, and you have a certain gender, you have a certain visual that we've assumed this is what leadership looks like. Well, now leadership looks different, and with that we bring in different aspects of it. So I'm under a female VP right now, and she's great. And I actually had said that it was one of the few times I heard in an organization where somebody's not just said it in the beginning, but said it, 6 months later when, the shit has hit the fan, literally. And her point was, she goes, I'm here to protect you. If you see, you guys keep on working as IT, keep on working. And if you think you can do it, that's fine. But if the bus is coming towards you, you still think you can do it, I'm fine with that too. But she goes, if I think that the bus is about to hit you, I'm going to pull you out from under the bus. I'm your leader and I have to protect you. And that's my responsibility. Whether it was male or female saying it, that's not the part. The part that it was being said, and it was being said not just as an initial to be nice to a team, but being said authentically. That was something that was great leadership, and it was from a female, and I was so proud to hear it. And like other people on the team as well also felt it. So sometimes it's just the baby steps of seeing and admiring and learning from each other, and then also facilitating conversation. So women in leadership, there's programs within Go Easy. There's programs that I've also attended, even for, I've done some of the, this is one of them, but like doing some of the women in IT panels where different women are talking about their struggles, but also how they lifted each other up and how they solutioned to get to the next level, or to have a solution with a situation that wasn't necessarily the best. So it's about opening up, it's about leaning in, and it's about learning and paving a path. If the path isn't there, sometimes we have to pave it. And one thing that I would say, when I've had female friends that are working on negotiating or dealing with something, or they're not used to negotiating, let's say for a salary, I've said to them, you need to ask. And like one friend of mine was like, I've never negotiated for the salary. I've always taken what I've got. She has 2 daughters. So I said to her, would you want your daughters to do that? And then that got her spine up to be like, no, I need to. So I'm like, you have to pave the path for your daughters to have an easier future so that they don't need to go through these struggles every time. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Fantastic. And I think the perspective you're bringing in there, that we typically tend to be better at advocating for others. And when it comes to advocating and negotiating for ourselves, is that's when we see that slight reluctance at times. And the strategy that you sort of spoke to there, that speaks volumes in terms of, so that seems quite reasonable, obviously. Question here is, what non-technical jobs or careers do you see growing as technology evolves? Where do we see the industry going and taking the next steps? And then I'm going to layer in within that is, what advice would you give to those who are looking to join the industry for the next female leads and leaders?
Yeah, so I could take that one. For the next steps for someone who wants to enter the data field, I would really advise you to do a passion project, something that you're really passionate about that you could kind of get in the weeds on. So as an example, we have interns on my team who are in their undergrad, and they're just trying to find their footing on if they want to proceed in data science. So I don't want to say force them to do a passion project, but we try to do it together during the term of their choice. One person did one on the evolution of K-pop over the last few years, something that she was very passionate about. But because she was passionate, she put a lot of effort into it and could actually explain the insights. She did a little bit of coding as well, and she took pride in her work, and she was able to publish it. So when she goes to an interview, she has that to speak about. And it's not a generic data set she worked on. It's something that she actually cares about. So I think when she does interview to try to get her foot in the door, the interviewer can see that she is really excited about data science because she has that passion of the actual project she did in her back pocket. So I think that's one of the best ways I would recommend for somebody trying to move in the data field, is actually have an applied version of your work, something you can speak proudly about. For the first part of your question as to what rules might be upcoming in the future, I think at Cineplex, we are seeing a big blend between cybersecurity and data science, where we need to protect the information that we're collecting based on our consumers. So there's a big push right now on privacy and compliance with the PII, the personal information we actually harvest. So I think the future roles of data science are definitely going to have that infused element of cybersecurity and protection in it in the next few years. And that's something we're kind of keeping our eyes out for ourselves, because we know that people want to protect their information.
I totally hear you on that, Sasha. I think because I do have some part security in my history as well too. So I think, yeah, it's definitely something that it used to be very delineated. The data science was on one side and security was basically just harping everybody else to, like, you know,
Yeah.
don't forget to do that. But now, with the new generations coming in, they're already going to have part of that, as instead of just security being the ambassadors for security, cybersecurity will be hopefully part of the ingrained culture within the organization. So as they build the controls for the security as well too. I would say in terms of going into the industry or learning about the industry before entering, it's also if you have people around you, to ask them questions, to ask them why they enjoy it, or what they like about it, what they don't like about it. And if you're lucky, you'll have people that will be honest and authentic and giving you the answers, so that you learn more about the industry. And something that I find, it can be the topic that's passionate, but the people that you work with will also, you can love your topic, you can love what you're doing, but it's the culture of the team as well that makes such a difference. And having good leadership, or having mentors that sort of are there that you can bounce questions off of, that's essential. And always, like, from a university perspective, even though it didn't turn out for me, but I've now helped other people that have been in university, it's about that networking. And for me, I went to a lot of wines and cheeses in university, but it didn't end up, it was a lot of wine and cheese, and we didn't necessarily get the opportunities from the roles at that time. But over time, I've been able to help. If I have another friend, like, for example, somebody that I know at LCBO, they knew somebody who'd finished at Waterloo. He graduated and he's working in retail. He hasn't got his first foot in the door, example, within accounting. But I'm like, okay, how can I help? What can I do with my network? I can try to help this person and see where we can go. So it's sometimes in the same way for data governance, data science, any of those things. If you have the right people building, like when they say, like, it takes a village, it's constantly taking a village. We're always evolving, we're always learning, and we're always moving towards growth in one way. So even we don't just have a child that's growing, our career is always growing and evolving. Data governance wasn't an opportunity when I finished university, but now it's an understanding that now we're having this conversation at Brock University. So that in and of itself, there's different things. I did management information systems. At the time that I came out, people are like, what is MIS? I don't know. So there's constantly an evolution, and the roles that we know of now, there might be a new role coming up 5 to 10 years from now that we don't even fathom, just because the industries are constantly changing as well too.
That's excellent. Taking a barriers approach here, what are some of the common fear factors or constraints that are preventing females to step into this field? There's a question here from one of our viewers. And Sasha, I'm going to start with you on that one, please.
Yeah, so what I see with young people coming onto my team is that they don't think they can do it. They don't think that they have the ability to do it. They think they need to put in like 20 years of schoolwork. So they just have a really big imposter syndrome. And I think what you need to realize too when you come into a new team is you're going to be trained. So yes, I appreciate that you have imposter syndrome and that you want to do a really good job. But at some point, you just have to build up the confidence to say, I'm just going to do it, and just when you're in the job, try to pull resources together to give it the best you can do, be it online training courses or, find somebody else in the team who can kind of job shadow a little bit. But the biggest fear is really in the person themselves. They think that they just can't do the role. They think data science is way out there and you need a PhD to do it. That is not the case. All of us have some type of logic and reasoning in ourselves. And once you put in the effort, you can do the job as well as anybody else. So it's really just building in that personal confidence.
Excellent. And Mitu, your thoughts on this?
I would agree. Just realizing that everybody else is coming from the same boat as well too. Like, you're no different from the person sitting beside you. They might just portray better than you, but you don't know it. And oftentimes, exactly, like I started off in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I was basically like, here you go to a client and just ask the questions. And all I was doing, and they're like, if you don't understand it, just keep on asking questions. So I was like, oh my God, like, what is this, right? It was a fake it until you make it. And because I could ask the questions, that was my responsibility, was to ask the questions. So when you're starting off in a new role, the more questions you ask, the better it is. There's no wrong question. And feeling that you might ask too many questions, I think the person who's giving the answers will probably appreciate the fact that you're asking questions to build your knowledge. And university is a place to learn how to learn. After you come out of university, you're still going to continue to learn, but the benefits and the toolbox that you've got from university will be your foundation, but it's not your everything, because you're going to learn more on the job, no matter which job it is.
You've both talked about the importance of a role model in and around workplace for others who are looking to join the field to come in. And of course, the importance of role models starts, one of the areas that starts from is from having successful individuals to be part of successful teams and then under successful leaders. Blending that into the challenges that we have seen with distributed work and remote work in the pandemic arena. How has the pandemic changed this perspective and the membership of the teams in the STEM area, but also in the data and data sciences arena? And I'm going to start with getting thoughts from Mitu on this, perhaps.
Sure. So in terms of the role models, I would say it doesn't matter. Like, we can use COVID as a roadblock, or we can just move it to the side and say, I got to do what I got to do. I got to learn. I got to meet. I have to. So the best things that I've noticed, and I've done it more on a women's networking group or on a team building group, but it can be used in the same way, even within organizations, is to reach out. So I had one person who was finishing his master's in data science, and he was asked if he could mentor with me so that he could learn more about what was happening on the data governance end for a project that I was working on. So he just, he booked his manager said, go ahead and reach out to me. He booked a meeting in my calendar and then introduced himself and asked if he could shadow in on the meetings that were going for our initial next generation data governance build. So once I understood his needs and what he was looking for, I've just kept him as optional on the meetings, and he gets to learn as he goes along, right? He can always ask me questions, ask other people questions. And then we have, so in the organization, there's actually a coffee roulette at GoEasy where you randomly are connected with somebody else within IT. So that's more for me, because of the level I'm in. I'm not necessarily looking to create a connection to like a role model, but it's good in terms of colleagues and understanding more about what's happening across the organization. If there was somebody junior to me who wanted to learn more and ask to say like, Mitu, can I join in on some of these meetings or, ask questions, by all means. And in the past, I've had people, let's say at LCBO, say, I want to learn more about data governance. Can we have a coffee? Can we chat about it? So in COVID world, you can just say, can we book lunch and do a virtual lunch, and you can have that conversation. Now teams are, across Canada. So you actually can use it to say, now I'm not limiting it to my geographical location. I'm limiting it only to whoever's in the organization, who I can see their calendars and ask if they're all right with setting up a meeting. So it's sort of you can look at a cup as half full or half empty. It is what you make of it.
Yeah, from my perspective, for me, I would say I'm always looking for people I can aspire to be. So I feel deep down, I have a ton of mentors who don't even know that they are my mentors. And I would really encourage people to have that perspective. If you see someone who is exhibiting a trait that you really desire to be, then pay attention to it, and say, oh, that person handled that situation really well. They don't have to be an official role model. Just always kind of keep your eyes open for things that would make your personality stronger and your work ethic stronger. Within the data science team, the pandemic was a little bit rough because we were a pretty close team to begin with, so it was hard not seeing each other. The way that we keep that camaraderie and that constant learning and trying to better ourselves is we started to do this thing called random walks. So a random walk has a data science connotation to it already. It's graph theory. But what we do is every 4 p.m. on a Wednesday, we put in our headsets and just walk around the community a little bit, just a small talk with each other. And although it might seem really trivial, and some people might think, we're wasting billable hours, it has really helped us connect, especially during the pandemic. We get to see people's kids if they're around, and we get to see their community and things that they have planted. And it just helps you look at a person in a new light. A role model doesn't always have to be something work related. It can also be something you're aspiring to be personally as well. So my team actually has quite a bit of, fathers and moms who are great people. And, you pick up those traits and you kind of keep note of them in your own mind. So I think the pandemic has definitely brought some challenges, but you can do things to try and break that. And perhaps you will see a different perspective on what a role model is to you that you can kind of store away in your mind.
Such an inspiring insight, the walks, right? So, because what we're losing is those touch points. Those what we call conversations has had to give way because of the distributed nature of work. Well, you're finding and reinventing ways of doing this. Fantastic, great, I love it. We've got a question here from one of our viewers. It says, what do you recommend to those females already in the industry to accelerate their path to leadership positions? And Sasha, please, perhaps.
Yeah, one thing that has really worked for me, because just as some background, so I did start as a data analyst, which is pretty entry level at Cineplex about 6 years ago. And since then, I have been able to grow my career, and now I'm a director on the team. So one of the big reasons for that is I think I brought to life a lot of innovative solutions that drove revenue. So just kind of pay attention to the driving money piece, because that's the main reason why you would move ahead in the business. It's when you stop working in the business and you start working on the business. So what I would really recommend to you to move your career forward is try to look at the core challenges that your company is facing. And when you present it to your manager or your senior team, dedicate, a slide or a good chunk to how this is a revenue stream. And then they start seeing you in that light instead of being just a task or a doer. Reports are still really valuable, but how do you turn that into an actual money flowing project is what will help you kind of move your career up.
Excellent advice. Look to the bottom line. Me too.
So I totally agree. Flipping the cost center to a revenue generating location is always amazing. And I did do that. I think that's sort of where I ended up going from one arm of security, where I ended up sharing in past lives, that we were able to help with building customer relations and building customer sales from security, because we were able to sell the security aspects and end up winning bids. So that was all of a sudden, I was the only person within security who was not considered a cost center, but a revenue generating person, which was not the norm at the time. So totally agree with that. Another random thing that I still have to work on, but I wanted to say on a side note, a lot of the conversations, it's not all the conversations, but you will find that there's some senior leadership conversations that are had offsites. They're not necessarily in the meetings. And traditionally, men have been going off to play like a game of golf. So one of the things that I'm telling my friends, or like people that I know that are in university or whatever, I still have to work on it. My golf is not great. I'm going to be honest, right? But doing those things that maybe we didn't traditionally do, we need to get out there. Women need to be out on the greens, having the conversations, and not being, whether you're good at it or not, doesn't matter. But if there's an organizational tournament, having people know you, having people understand what you're working on and what value you're bringing to the organization needs to be spoken up about in different venues. So I will say that I'm not necessarily the best at touting. I have one friend, she's amazing. Like, she's constantly saying women need to advertise their wins or what they've done more, right? That it tends to be culturally, men will speak up more about what they've done, and women might have done 2 times the amount, but they'll talk only 10% of what's being advertised. So touting your own stuff, advertising, I need to do it myself. Like, I will be honest on that. So I'm not the best on that, but it is something that we need to work on doing. But doing, breaking those barriers, getting all out on the golf course, speaking up in the meetings, and making sure that your values are appreciated and known. And that also comes, it's easier said than done in the sense that having good mentors and good leaders that are allowing you to shine, and sharing your wins with other people, that's also, it's a luck, like, if it happens or doesn't happen, but that's also something that ideally, if you can get good coaching and good mentoring to lift you up within an organization, whether it's male or female, that doesn't matter. It's about whether they see your potential and appreciate you and share, and let you shine. That's the best advice, if possible.
Excellent. On the path of advice, continuing a few more steps perhaps here, what might you advise for those male colleagues that are there, and what could they be doing in this area to help facilitate, encourage? So, as to borrow a phrase from yourselves in here, pave that path.
Yeah, I think one thing that I appreciate that my male colleagues do at Cineplex is they amplify women, and I think it's a really great tactic because you're not interrupting them. So as an example, if a female colleague such as Anne is trying to say something, you as a male colleague should say, "Hey, what did Anne just say?" Just to kind of draw attention back to her and make sure that she has the opportunity to voice her idea, and you just give it a little bit more amp to it. So just kind of, point out and say, "Hey, I think Anne had an idea," or "I think so-and-so had an idea. Let's give them a few minutes." That would be great as a male colleague. I think I would appreciate that a lot. And I think my Cineplex colleagues try to do it themselves too, but you have to be aware, and it is an action you have to take on your own to always be looking out to make sure everybody has a voice at the table. And if they're more quiet, just kind of point it out and say, "What do you want to share?" Or "Did you have a thought to add to it?" That would be really helpful.
Yeah, I totally, to piggyback off of what Sasha's saying, especially those people that are quieter, male or female, but now we are talking specifically about the female perspective. If there's somebody that you think is not being heard, often it's those people that will have the nuggets that help build or solution when you're looking at a project or a problem. And so it's good to say, you, the person that's the quiet person in the corner, can we hear your opinion? And specifically calling them out and giving them that opportunity, which is often not done. And then even spending some one-on-one time with that person, hearing, let's say if they're on your team, hearing their understandings, hearing their ideas, and trying to encourage them to speak up about them in the meetings themselves, so that you can also say, Sasha said this, let's hear what Sasha said. I heard her talking about this before, but can you share it with the team? Right? So it might be sometimes putting them out of their comfort zone, but sometimes we need to do that, right? And it's sometimes a hurdle that needs to be done, but once it is, it's only growth from there.
Excellent. Taking a slight divergence here, but a related question that's come in. From your experience and your observations, what social issues have you seen where technology has come into and either amplified its effect, impact, or the solution to it, be it in Canada, North America, or beyond? So the effect of technology on social issues. Mitu, perhaps, from your thoughts on that one.
So it's an interesting thing that you're asking. I was actually thinking of it from, and it's a touchy subject, but it is something that I am truly seeing, social media. So in terms of technology, social media right now, when it comes to people's position in the pandemic and which way they're going, I think technology and social media and the way that it has brought, it is sometimes polarizing within communities of where people are going. That's something that's a world view of the social media, where we are able to understand, let's say, what's happening in a country on the basis of environment, or we're able to see a lot more, but we're also able to either learn or become polarized sometimes on the opinions based on technology, because it's bringing that out in our communities.
Yeah, just to add to that, totally agree with me too. I think from my perspective, technology is hindering social interactions, and that some people seem to put themselves behind like an avatar or a Bitmoji, for example. So you lose that, facial emotional reaction when you're talking to someone. And that's how you know if somebody's really accepting of your idea, or you could perhaps, nudge them a little bit if you see they're hesitant on something. So when I'm working with my team, we always try to have cameras on, so I could try to get a little bit of their emotional cues to know if socially they're kind of accepting with this. So if they have a problem noodling in their head that they just aren't really sure if to bring up. Whereas if we're in person, I know the small ticks in my team, and I know that if they have something that's troubling them, I can kind of poke them on it. So I guess in the workplace, that's how technology is kind of hindering social atmospheres. Everybody's kind of behind this email barrier, and you lose the personality and the nuance behind what they're saying.
Excellent. So I'm looking at the time and where did the time go. This was a conversation that I'm sure will continue, and I'm so grateful for each and every one of your contribution to all of the questions that have been answered. And there are a number of other questions that have come in that we haven't had the opportunity to tackle here, but perhaps we'll have another opportunity to do in the near future. I'm very grateful for your time, Sasha, and Mitu, for coming here, for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and offering your insights and recommendations and tips and tricks as well. Thank you both so very much.
Thank you.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And for all of those who are working here, Goodman Group is a community-focused learning and development services provider that works to support professionals, businesses, and entrepreneurs pursuing growth through professional development certificate programs, executive education, consulting services, and startup support. And it is my pleasure to introduce our latest program in the area of equity, diversity, and inclusion, and the importance of collective accountability. This short program is scheduled for October, late October 20th and 29th, and will be offered as a online session that will be live and led by one of our award-winning instructors in this area. For any questions or inquiries in this area, please reach out to a member of the Goodman Group team, whose contacts you can probably see on the screen there. So moving to our next session, which is coming up next week, next time that we are together, and that would be on September 8th. And the area of focus is identifying the best one for and revealing your new product through it. So this is in the area of new product development and new product management, and it's this panel is includes Dr. Thang Papakanal and Dr. Holtman from the Goodman School of Business, both of who have won a number of awards in this area. So looking forward to having our colleagues from the Goodman School of Business here next time that we are together. Until next time, I'm going to bid you all farewell and take care and stay safe.